Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Tanner's Favorite Things. I'm Tanner Knight, and today we have a special unboxing for you. If you could see the side of this box, well, why don't we just go ahead and show you what's on the side. It says Randall Amplifiers. What could this possibly be? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Looks like we've got box number 2. All right, this is in fact a Randall product. This is a fun little amp that I've had my eye on for a while, but I haven't had a chance to plug into. It is the Randall RD1H. This looks like it's the user guide for the RD5H as well, and the RD5 112 combo, but in fact this is the RD1H. And that 1 in the name indicates that we have 1 hot watt of juice in this tube-driven amplifier. So let's go ahead and take it out and take a look. This is really nice packaging. I wouldn't call it super high-tech, but it's very nice closed cell foam, and it's very nicely packed, and we have a nice plastic covering shroud here that keeps all the dust and crap out. This is a product that's made in China, so it has traveled across the ocean to get here. And here's what the top looks like. It's pretty standard looking so far, black Tolex. It's got some smooth and rougher sections, nice handle. Might need to get a Phillips head on here just to make sure that those are tight. Sometimes these tend to loosen up in flight, but they look good. All right, and you can see the grate in here, inside which sleeps a tube. So let's take a look at the front. We have the Randall RD1H with 1 input, 1 gain knob, t.s.s, not sure what that is, have to take a look at the manual and see what this little toggle does. And then we have 1 tone and 1 volume. So 1 watt of tube-driven tone with the minimum of controls on the front, but a nice looking package. I like the little skull devil icon there, looks pretty metal. What I've heard from this amp is that for being just a 1 watt little amplifier, it can be a beast. Like I said, driven by tubes. I'll get the tube complement here for you in a second. Finally, here's the last side here. We have a pretty good shot of the transformer, whatever 3 tubes we have, another little transformer there, and our speaker out. So we have a minimum of 8 ohm load here. I guess that includes 8 and 16 ohm. And then we have a speaker emulator here as well, which is a balanced XLR out. Looks like this little ground switch here is only engaged if it's up. So here is ground. That says lift. Not exactly sure what that means. But we have a send and return effects loop. We'll have to give that a shot. So like I said, made in China, actually just assembled in China. So whatever that means, it was put together in China. So for all intents and purposes, it was made in China. Let's go ahead and take a look at the specs. So our little t.s.s toggle here stands for tone stack shift, which is a 3-way mid-range frequency variance shift. So I guess it's either scooped, flats, or maybe enhanced mids. We'll have to take a look at what that sounds like, but t.s.s stands for tone stack shift. Okay, so we have 1 12AU7 power tube and 2 12AX7 preamp tubes. So a pretty common set of preamp tubes. That 12AU7, I'm not as familiar with that one for the power section, but I assume that it has enough juice to power this 1 watt beast. All right, let's plug it in and see if we can get some tones out of this thing. All right, I've had a little bit of time to play around with this amp head, and I've got a few observations to make before I play a single note. It took me a few cabinets to find the right combination. I started off with the Mesa Boogie 2x12, which has 2 Black Shadow Celestion 90 watt speakers. Theoretically, they should have no problem taking 1 watt of tube power. And, you know, they took the power just fine. I think there was no problems with the speakers being in risk of being damaged, but I dimed the thing and it just didn't sound all that great. So I switched over to this cabinet behind me. This is my RMC 2x12 with V30s, Celestion V30s in it. And I thought, okay, this speaker is a little tighter. Maybe it could make a difference, but in reality, it made it worse. The sound out of the two V30s, I just couldn't get it to sound good with either the cleans, quote unquote cleans, we'll get to that in a second, or the dirty sounds, obviously with the gain knob. So V30s, no go whatsoever. The Mesa Boogie cabinet with the black shadows, it was passable, but it was not what I would call great out of the box tone. And then I finally settled on the Rivera cab with the trusty old Celestion G12 T75s. So far, this is the only cabinet and amp pairing that I would actually be satisfied with this little head. Otherwise, I don't know, it's not too versatile in other tonal possibilities. So let's go ahead and just mess around with the dials, see what this t.s.s switch does, and see if we can't get our pedals in the mix with the send and receive on the back. All right, so I'm plugged in. Today I'm going to be using the Rosewood Ernie Ball Music Man Axis Super Sport. This is a guitar I picked up recently, and I am in love with it. It plays so well, sounds great in all 5 positions. I typically leave it in the humbucker though, just like the rest of my guitars. But let's go ahead and hear what this guitar sounds like through the Randall RD1H head. So right now we have the power on and we're plugged directly into the guitar through our braided cable here, and it sounds like this. Absolutely nothing. No tone coming out. What happens when we raise the volume, do you think? Well, you'd think that it would raise the volume, but in this case, it doesn't. By raising the volume, I think what you're doing is raising the power tube output, and without the preamp, which is the gain stage, this is all what I'm thinking. Without the preamp gain stage, the volume knob does nothing. So all the way cranked, we have no tone on the volume. So let's go ahead and leave the volume all the way up and see what happens when we mess with our gain knob here. There we go. So we got a little sound here just by kicking the gain into about 25%. I found that this is the only position, 25% and lower, the only position where you can get usable clean tones out of this amp. Otherwise, I still have yet to find that perfect setting. So let's go ahead and hear some clean tones. Again, we have the Ernie Ball Music Man Axis Super Sport being fed directly into the Randall RD1H head, plugged into this Rivera cab with 2x12 Celestion G12T speakers, being captured by 2 microphones. We have the Sennheiser E906 and the Audio-Technica AT4033 SE microphone, capturing about 1.5 foot from that left speaker, your right speaker. Both of those microphones are being preamped by my Focusrite Scarlett AT920 interface, and those signals are being fed directly into the DAW. So here's a little bit of clean. We got drop D. So even right from the start, in that clean, you can still hear a bit of breakup. So it's not what I would call 100% clean. Again, I really struggled to find the setting to get a clean tone on this amp. And you would think 1 watt, it should be able to be kind of crystally, but for whatever reason, there's a little too much gain in the preamp stage, I would imagine. And it's just not allowed to be clean at all. So let's go ahead and mess with the tone knob. This actually influences the sound quite a bit, and right now it's pretty dark. It's not what I would call muffled, but it's pretty dark. So again, not clean. There's still some breakup there, but it brings the tonal center to the front, and I think it has a little bit more presence. So that's our tone knob, influences the sound as you would expect. But right now we're in the middle position of this t.s.s switch. So let's go ahead, kick it over to my left, your right, and hear what it sounds like. Not too much difference there. Here, I'll kick it all the way over to the right, your left. So in this kind of volume range, or this gain range, I guess is more accurate, the t.s.s doesn't really do much. But I did notice that it does influence the sound when we put a little more gain in there. So let's go ahead and leave our volume dimed. We have our tone not quite dimed, but maybe around 75–80%. And then our gain, let's go ahead and crank her up. That is 100% dimed gain. Good sounding, distorted, high gain tones without having to make your eardrums bleed. If you do notice, I have earplugs in just in case. This is still a really loud amp, and anytime you have any kind of amplification that is going to elevate the sound beyond 95 or so decibels, it's a good idea to have your headphones in. I just so happen to have a decibel meter in this room, so let's go ahead and crank it up and see if we can get somewhere in the 100 range or something like that. So, oh yeah, we're over here. So it is only going up to the 87 decibel range. It's not even getting into the 90 decibel range. The cabinet is obviously pointed kind of this direction, and the meter is off to the left, so it's not getting the full reading of what the decibels are right here at the speaker. But I can tell you just from experience, having these big 30 watt, 50 watt, 120 watt tube heads plugged into these 2x12 cabs, you can really tell a difference. And this is loud for sure, but it's not moving the air that you would expect from, say, a 30 watt or higher amplifier. Alright, so now let's see what that t.s.s switch does now that we have our full gain in the mix. Go ahead and... This is all the way to the left. My left, your right. Get a little bit of extracurricular hum in there, but that darkens it up quite a bit. So I assume that's with our mids scooped all the way out. Here's the middle once again. Okay, and now the difference between the middle and the right section. Sounds like we got a little bit of a mid boost in the far right is what I would just guess based on what it sounds like. So Randall is really one of those brands known for metal music, and it's not a surprise that this little 1 watt amp is geared towards the high gain crowd, just the high gain crowd with less volume. Kirk Hammett of Metallica is known for playing Randall amps. Dimebag Darrell played Randalls for a while. There's a lot of really high profile metal gods that used to play Randall or still do play Randall amps, so it has a real lineage of high gain terror. Well, we know that the little amp has its own high gain built in, but let's see if we can get this pedal platform to work. We do have a send and receive input and output on the back of this amp, and I do currently have it plugged into my pedal board right now. And just a preview, this has been a little dicey. All of my distortion pedals don't play nice with whatever this send and receive loop is, and it just induces a lot of noise and doesn't really give me the desired effect. but let's go ahead and check it out anyway. We're gonna have to back the gain way down for this. Let's go back to about 25% and get a clean-ish tone. So let's first add a non-distortion pedal here. This is the Boss Chorus CH1 pedal, a real classic Boss pedal, and it sounds really good in this mix. Then we'll get into some distortion. So pretty effective chorus pedal effect. It did not introduce any additional noise, it just gave you the effect. But let's go ahead and see what the tube screamer does. So this is about as annoying as it gets. Whatever this sound is here is absolutely terrible, and I can't seem to chase it out. This is just a regular standard tube screamer with my standard settings, and that's with the guitar turned all the way down. If we crank it up, it kind of goes away when we play, but it's just unacceptable amounts of noise when your fingers are not making any sound on the guitar. So no go on the tube screamer, and that's a pretty big deal breaker for me. If I can't have my tube screamer in the mix, then I don't know, this amp doesn't really provide much of a platform for me. So I'm going to also check to see if plugging the pedal directly in the front of the amp makes a difference. But let's go ahead and hear what the Metal Zone sounds like, just to show you what terrible really sounds like. The sounds themselves are okay, I guess. It's not the best that the Metal Zone has ever sounded, but you just can't have that kind of amount of noise in between whenever you're touching the strings. So that's the Metal Zone. Let's just cycle through some of the other ones. We have the Boss Turbo Distortion. No good. MXR Double Overdrive. And finally the Big Muff, which surprisingly, Big Muff is as quiet as can be. So for whatever reason, Big Muff plays nicely with this effects loop. Let's see if we can crank it up a little bit. So it's very quiet, very ineffective, I would say. Okay, so now I'm bypassing the effects loop. I have the guitar plugged directly into the pedal board, chained all the way through all my pedals into the front of the amp, and let's see if that makes a difference. Here's the tube screamer. So we got to keep the gain pretty low to have the pedals in there, but right in the front of the amp, this thing is dead quiet. Let's go ahead and hear the Metal Zone. So far, so good. I can live with that kind of hum after not having your fingers on any of the metal parts of the guitar, but as is, dead quiet. that's actually pretty usable. I like that. And let's go ahead and pump it back to the left. You're right. Got to be all the way to the right. I think that that is the best setting as far as the t.s.s control goes. But let's hear some of the other pedals. Boss Turbo Distortion. MXR Double Overdrive. Finally found one that doesn't play well with the front of the amp. That one just doesn't sound good. But just for kicks, back to the big muff. Well, that's exactly the opposite of what I expected, but interesting nonetheless. So if you do want to use a pedal platform with this amplifier, it is possible, and who knows, maybe this one particularly has a kind of wonky effects loop. But if you do find that your effects loop does not produce the sounds that you're looking for, go ahead and just plug it into the front of the amp. So far, that's produced the best tones for me. I have the t.s.s switch all the way over to the right, the volume dimed, the tone at about 75, and our gain is somewhere around 25-30% if you do have any pedals that you want to have in the mix and have kind of a clean tone. Alright, the Randall RD1H, the D stands for Diavlo, by the way, I believe. Randall Diavlo 1H, that's their line of amplifiers. It's more geared towards metal folks. But the RD1H is 1 watt of tube-driven fury. Am I blown away by this product? No, I'm not. It's not the most user-friendly. If you don't have the right speaker combination or even the right cabinet combination, maybe I think that this cabinet's contributing a lot to the sound as well. If you don't have that, then you might have a shitty sounding rig, and that kind of sucks. But if you have a cabinet with 2 G12 T75s already, I can tell you it's already a winning combination. I would say that this amplifier is for the metal user who is only going to be playing high gain tones. If you're going to be playing cleans, it's just going to be the drop D style cleans, and then you'll eventually kick it into high gear. So you'll want high gain in most situations, I would imagine. But if you're looking for an amp to give you Fender style cleans and give you some overdrive that works for blues, I don't think this is the amp for you. The ideal situation is the metal guy who has a situation where he can't crank up his Mesa Boogie to full steam, and having that 1 watt amp gives you the high gain tones without the deafening volumes. So you probably won't gig with this. You may not even record with this amp, but if you do need a sturdy tube practice amp with a more metal bias, then this is definitely an option. I just picked this amp off of the Musician's Friend's Stupid Deal of the Day. You can find them used in the $275 to $350 range in most cases. One final point that I want to make, this is essentially a practice amp, okay? So let's just go ahead and call it that. It's a practice amp, but so is this. I don't know if you can see on screen, but the Positive Grid Spark 40 amp is also a practice amp, and it has a lot more features to it. So how do these two products compare at roughly the same price? The Positive Grid is at $225, I think, or at least $250 MSRP. How do they compare? Well, the Positive Grid blows this thing out of the water for features. I think that as far as sound goes, it's on par with the amount of noise you can create with it, but the Positive Grid has so many more features. It comes with a DAW. It comes with all kinds of sounds that you can create in the amplifier unto itself, and not to mention anything about the practice ability or the ability to build your skills using the jam along functionality. So if I really had to choose between these two products for a practice amp, I would choose the Positive Grid hands down. So those are my initial thoughts. I'm going to spend a little more time with this amplifier. I'm not quite satisfied with the sounds. I think we can do a little bit better, so I'm going to hopefully have a follow-up video soon. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this specific amp. So hit me up, I'd love to hear about it. So thank you. If you do like this content, I highly encourage you to subscribe and ring that notification bell whenever a new video comes out. I try to aim for weekly videos. So if you're into this content, I would love to have you hit that subscribe button and be notified every time I have a new video. So thanks for watching. Hope to see you on the next one.